What if everything you know is wrong?
All right, let's just jump right in, shall we? I mean, think about it. From tablets keeping the peace in the car to smartphones that somehow sneak their way onto the dinner table, screens are just everywhere in our kids' lives. And that brings up this massive, massive question for pretty much every parent out there.
So, what are we dealing with here? Is all this technology a fantastic tool for learning and connecting with people? Or is it something more sinister? A harmful habit that's literally rewiring our kids' brains and not in a good way. You hear this debate all the time, and it gets pretty heated, right? But here's the good news. The science is finally starting to cut through the noise and give us some solid answers.
So, what's the verdict from the scientists? Well, the first thing we've got to get straight is that this isn't a simple thumbs up or thumbs down situation. It's not just black and white. It's way, way more complicated than that. In fact, what the research is telling us is that the real impact of screen time pretty much boils down to three critical factors.
Okay, so what are they? First up is H. I mean, it's obvious, right? A toddler's brain is just a sponge, and it's super sensitive. That's a world away from a teenager's brain. Next, we have amount, and this is a big one. An hour a day? Totally different story than 7 hours a day, especially if that screen time is pushing out essentials like, sleep or just running around outside. And finally, maybe the most important piece of the puzzle, content. What is your kid actually doing on that screen? That changes everything.
And this slide just lays it out perfectly. Think about it. There's this huge gulf between just sitting there passively soaking it all in, zombies scrolling through feeds or binging cartoons, and actually engaging with the screen. When a kid is doing something interactive or creative, like playing a problem-solving game, making digital art, or even just video chatting with grandma, their brain is firing on all cylinders. It's a totally different ballgame and a much, much healthier one.
Yeah, so this quote really hits the nail on the head. We have to get past this simplistic idea that all screen time is automatically bad. The reality is it's more complicated, it's nuanced, and if we're going to help our kids navigate this digital world, we have to understand that. But, and this is a big but, that doesn't mean we can just ignore the risks, because believe me, there are some very real dangers we need to talk about.
So let's dive into what might be the single biggest risk that researchers are flagging: addiction. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of the brain science here and really look at what happens when using a screen stops being a choice and turns into a compulsion.
Okay, so when scientists talk about addictive use, what are they actually talking about? Well, it's not just using screens a lot. It's a very specific pattern of behavior. It's when a kid is constantly thinking about gaming or social media, even when they're not on it. It's when they start lying about how much time they're really spending online. It's when they drop hobbies they used to love and start using screens as their main way to just check out, to escape from the real world.
And here, this is where the research gets really, really serious. We're not just talking about bad habits anymore. This has literal life or death stakes. A huge 4-year study found something pretty terrifying. Teenagers who showed these patterns of addictive screen use had a 2 to 3 times higher rate of suicidal behaviors than other kids. Just let that sink in, 2 to 3 times higher. That is a staggering, sobering connection.
And don't think this is some rare, fringe problem affecting just a few kids. That same study, it found that almost 1 in 3 teenagers were on a path of increasingly addictive social media use over those 4 years. 1 in 3. This is a mainstream issue, a common path that a lot of kids are heading down. So, we've talked about the behavior, but it goes deeper than that. This isn't just in their heads, psychologically speaking. Thanks to brain scans, neuroimaging studies, we can now literally see what's happening. We have a direct window into how excessive screen time is linked to actual, measurable, physical changes in a child's brain structure.
Okay, check this out. A huge study from the National Institutes of Health came back with a real bombshell. They found that kids who were on screens the most, we're talking over 7 hours a day, showed a thinning of the brain's cortex. Now, what's the cortex? Think of it as the brain's command center. It's that wrinkly outer layer that does all the heavy lifting. Complex thought, reasoning, making sense of the world. This kind of thinning is something scientists usually see in much, much older people. So to find it in kids, that is a massive red flag.
And it gets even more interesting and a little concerning. Researchers discovered this weird trade-off happening in the brain. It's like the brain is adapting to all this screen use. The parts that are good at processing really fast visuals, they're actually maturing faster. But, and here's the catch, it comes at a price.
It's almost like the brain is borrowing resources from other departments, leaving those more complex areas, the ones we need for things like language, reading, and understanding other people, a bit underdeveloped.
So let's look at this by age group, because it's a little different for each. In preschoolers, we're seeing that thinning in the parts of the brain for language and empathy. Move up to preteens, and the studies are linking heavy screen time to slower development in the brain's management centers, which might be connected to symptoms of ADHD. And then for teenagers, the brain scans show changes in the reward circuits that look eerily similar to what you'd see in the brain of someone with a substance abuse problem. Yikes.
Okay, I know that was a lot of pretty heavy, concerning science, and it is serious stuff, but here's the good news. The research doesn't just dump the problem in our laps and walk away. It also points us towards real, practical solutions. So, let's totally shift gears. We've got the awareness down, now let's move into action. Let's talk about how we can actually build healthier habits.
And the starting point for all of this, the absolute foundation, comes down to this one simple, powerful idea from the American Academy of Pediatrics. At the end of the day, there is no app, no educational show, no whiz-bang game that is more important for a developing brain than just real, live, face-to-face interaction with people who care about them. Nothing beats it.
So working from that core idea, the AAP gives us these really clear age-by-age guidelines. If you've got a baby under 18 months, the rule is basically no screens at all. The only exception is video chatting with family. Once they're toddlers, you can introduce some really high-quality stuff, but, and this is key, you have to be there with them, watching and talking about it. For the 2 to 5-year-olds, the limit is about an hour a day of good programming. And again, you're watching it together. Then for the older kids, 6 and up, it's less about a magic number and more about making sure you have consistent family rules so that screens aren't getting in the way of the important stuff, like sleep, exercise, and just hanging out as a family.
But that begs the question, right? How do you even know what high-quality content is? Well, here's a super handy tool for that. It's called the EAIMS test. Just ask yourself these questions. Is it engaging? Does it actively involve my kid's brain? Is it meaningful to their world? And does it encourage social interaction? EAIMS. It's just a fantastic, simple checklist to run through in your head before you hit play.
You know, when you boil it all down, this is what we're aiming for. We want to make sure that screen time is a supplement to their life, not a displacement of it. The real danger is when screens start shoving aside the absolute non-negotiables of childhood. You know, free play, good sleep, and real-life connections. But the real magic happens when technology can just add another cool layer to a life that's already packed with all that good stuff.
So, I guess the question this leaves us with is one we all have to ask ourselves. In our own homes, for our own families, what role are our screens playing? Are they a window to the world, opening up new ideas, helping our kids learn new skills and connect with people? Or have they started to become more like a wall, kind of closing us off from the world, and maybe even from each other? Finding that balance? Well, that's up to all of us.
Understanding begins with why.